My heart goes out to all of you, and hopefully next year it'll be under better circumstances than what we had to endure. I mean, the weather here in Canada was absolutely atrocious, and I remember seeing a news item on a news program at about 6 in the evening, and they interviewed several children making their rounds for Halloween, and they said, everything from it was the worst Halloween they had ever experienced. They could never remember a Halloween with so unsanitary conditions. I mean, it was terrible. It was very, very, rotten, and for those who had to actually go out trick-or-treating, you either froze to death or didn't really have the Halloween you anticipated. I think the fun part of Halloween came from, events that schools put off, different things that were done throughout the community. Definitely the economy made up for really shitty conditions is the only word that I can describe here with this year's Halloween. I can never remember a Halloween that had this terrible of a forecast and terrible of an outcome with so much anticipation. I think this year alone I must have watched over 12 or 13 horror movies within the span of 1 month. I watched Halloween H2O from 1998. I watched Hocus Pocus from 1993. I watched The Nightmare Before Christmas from 1994. I watched Interview with the Vampire from 1994. I watched Drag Me to Hell from 2009. Everything. I basically watched every kind of horror movie I could think of in anticipation of Halloween, and some family films as well. I think I watched Halloween 1 and 2 as well. I didn't watch the other two of the four, but I really anticipated Halloween, and this year I actually sat down and actually contributed to putting together trick-or-treat bags as well, and it was very, very unexpected. I think that the long-range forecast really ruined it for parts of Canada and the States, and if next year's Halloween is as terrible as this one, I think we should go ahead and cancel Halloween altogether. But I think that to use the word cancel is really downing children who actually look forward to Halloween. I know different people who actually prefer Halloween over Christmas, which is a bit of an unusual situation, but I know a lot of people who actually prefer Halloween over Christmas. Maybe it's because it's one night of the year where they worship the dead. Now, I know over in the Philippines, they actually have a day. I'm not sure if it's Halloween or not. I think there's another day designated for this. But I remember a news item from several years ago on television where they actually documented a day that the Philippines had set aside for worshiping the dead. And of course everyone knows Halloween is known as the one night of the year where the spirits of the dead can return to earth and actually are worshipped and paid respects for what they did in their past life. And I know the statistics of people dying and passing away is 1 every 2 minutes, and to make up for that, once every 2 minutes a new child is born, a new life is given. There are many different stories about Halloween, and there are a lot of them posted up on Halloween.com, which is the official website of Halloween. There's a lot of different Halloween recipes. There's a lot of different Halloween stories, a lot of different Halloween tunes, and different crafts you can download off the website. But there are a lot of different stories also posted up there as well. It's a reference for anything Halloween, and there are a lot of different tales that are associated with Halloween. Almost any horror movie you can think of gets spun at least once when Halloween rolls around, and there are many different tales that have been told 100 times over. One of my favorite Halloween tales definitely, is on that website as well. I'm sure if I look through all of them, there are many of them there. But I know that website is a tremendous reference for everything Halloween. But this year's Halloween really let me down, and really let a lot of people down, I would imagine, too. I'm not sure what states Halloween was actually canceled in, but it was something that caught my attention when I saw it. Different news programs actually putting together a significant amount of news items about it, news articles about it especially, and it's posted on different websites as well. I'm sure CNN and different news networks throughout the states have posted articles in their archives about Halloween being canceled. I must have seen, the thing that really caught my attention about Halloween was how these movie networks and these television networks had Halloween movie marathons. I saw Van Helsing there. I saw 3 or 4 of the Saws there. They had a Halloween marathon starting with Halloween 1 and going right through to Halloween 9. They had House of Wax on there. They've had a lot of Halloween specials spun this year, more Halloween specials than I can ever remember seeing on television. Usually, throughout the month of October, people use television to try to find Halloween specials, and they usually start on the 10th of October looking for Halloween specials, and they seemingly can't find any, because what I find is Halloween television specials start airing about 2 or 3 days prior to Halloween, usually from the 28th to the 31st. The TV is flooded with Halloween specials. I saw everything from the 28th to the 31st. I even saw Van Helsing, which is one of my favorite Halloween-themed films. It's actually starring Hugh Jackman, who actually was just on Monday Night Raw as a special guest host. He plays Van Helsing, and Princess Valeria, one of the last of the Valerias, was actually played by Kate Beckinsale, who is also a star in Underworlds 1 and 2 and 3. So, Van Helsing was probably my favorite one to see, one of my all-time favorite Universal productions. And for those who are unfamiliar with Van Helsing, who Hugh Jackman did a fantastic job playing, I even played the video game back on PlayStation 2 for this game because I loved it so much. I remember loving the Van Helsing movie so much from 2004. I actually got a pirated copy of it several days after it had been released in theaters, and remember sitting down watching it over 100 times because I loved it so much. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Van Helsing character, he's actually from the book Dracula, which is a novel that is studied by many high schools throughout the world, and basically he's a vampire hunter that Hollywood took and turned into its own movie. That film had everything in there. A lot of great monsters like Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Mr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde was in there. Great film, one of my favorites. And I always like the Halloween series as well. If I had to give you my top 3 favorite Halloween-themed movies, Van Helsing would have to be number 1. Coming behind that, the number 2 spot would be probably Halloween, any of the Halloween series. And in the number 3 spot, I'm going to have to go with Freddy Krueger, because you can't have a Halloween without seeing 2 or 3 of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. And I'm talking the original Nightmare on Elm Street films that were released back in the 80s. Nobody beats Robert Englund, who actually starred in a special edition of Hawaii NCSI Hawaii on Halloween night actually this year, which was kind of cool too. It's nice to know that Robert Englund is still around, but I remember the original Nightmare on Elm Street, not the new Nightmare on Elm Street. A huge fan of that film, but not as big a fan of that as the original Nightmare on Elm Street starring Robert Englund. Nobody can reincarnate Freddy Krueger and get away with it, in my opinion. Robert Englund, the original Freddy Krueger, who is actually now a downloadable character in Mortal Kombat Fatality for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. We previously did a audio commentary for our YouTube channel at youtube.com, JonathanClarke22, in our video archives, and for our audio archives in our radio form, talking about Robert Englund actually being a downloadable character for PlayStation 3's Mortal Kombat Fatality, and it's also available on Xbox 360. He just recently starred on a special edition of Hawaii NCIS, and it was awesome. So it's nice to know he's still around, but I really love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So we got in the number 1 spot Van Helsing, number 2 any of the Halloween series, and in the number 3 spot, in the 3rd position there, any of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I believe there were 9 of those. I think there were 9 of those, 9 Halloweens, and Van Helsing exactly only had 1 movie, and I was actually anticipating a sequel to Van Helsing, but we never saw that. The last Van Helsing movie came in 2004, following its release on DVD. We never saw a sequel. I was really anticipating Van Helsing 2, like I'm anticipating a second part to the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, released for the first time in theaters on April 30th, 2010. I saw it a few months after it came out in theaters and loved it. But yeah, I remember playing the Van Helsing video game for PlayStation 2 and loving it. The action in the game was awesome, and the voiceovers and the graphics were phenomenal. And the Xbox version is great too. But yeah, this year's Halloween, getting back on the topic here, canceled. Very, very unfortunate. You spend all the month of October, throughout the entire month of October, anticipating Halloween, and when it finally happens, you're hit with this, and you're like, okay, Halloween is canceled. I mean, what idiots are making these decisions for all these different states? Again, I don't know what states Halloween was actually canceled in, but for those states that actually had to endure that, my heart goes out to you for that, because I can't imagine what you were thinking. I can't imagine what your children were thinking, knowing that Halloween was canceled, running around from house to house, going trick or treat with the costumes, and being let down because Halloween was unfortunately canceled. Again, what I think made up for this year's Halloween were the specials that were aired on television, and the economy putting together Halloween parties for different schools and different charitable functions and stuff. I think that's really what made the Halloween of 2011 very memorable. And I always go every Halloween and watch 3 or 4 Disney movies, like Hocus Pocus is one that I love to watch. The remake of I Put a Spell on You for that movie was great. That was directed by Kenny Ortega, and I always like to watch the Halloween series as well, although I never got through all 4 of the films starring Kimberly J. Brown, who was replaced by Sarah Paxton in the 4th one. Maybe that was the reason why I didn't watch Return to Halloween Town, released in 2006, because Sarah Paxton was in the movie. She was in movies like Aquamarine and Superhero Movie, which was an adaptation and comical version of Spider-Man. Maybe because of her roles in those films turned me off from watching Halloween Town Part 4. Who knows? I'd love to see more Halloween-type movies released. We just had Spooky Buddies released from Walt Disney Pictures. I think that was the 4th or the 5th installment of the Air Buddies series, which was great. Previous installments included Space Buddies, Air Buddies, and there was another one too. Snow Buddies is the other one I'm thinking of. I think this is the 4th part of the 4th or 5th part of the Buddy series. I think there were Christmas ones too. I think there were 2 Christmas ones, Santa Paws and Santa Buddies. Kind of get confused there with that one, but great. I think what really made up for Halloween this year was the actual anticipation of it, but that's like anything really, isn't it? You spend, a whole month getting ready for things like Halloween and Christmas, and usually when the things for Halloween are put away, 2 or 3 days after Halloween, they start promoting Christmas. And you hear that for about a month and a half, and when it finally arrives and you open up your presents on Christmas morning, the anticipation goes away, and you wonder why you anticipated it so much. Maybe it's just